General Hospital spoilers for the next 2 weeks. February 2nd to February 13th reveal that news of Maxie's impending awakening spreads through Port Charles like a tremor building beneath the surface, quiet yet powerful enough to shift the emotional landscape of everyone connected to her. For Lulu, the thought of Maxie opening her eyes feels like a storm gathering at the edge of her fragile peace. She has spent months believing that her bond with Nathan was slowly solidifying, growing from shared loneliness and moments of unexpected tenderness. Yet deep inside, she always feared that their connection existed only because Maxie could not return to reclaim the place she once held. Now, with Maxie on the verge of consciousness, that fear sharpens into something undeniable. Nathan senses the shift long before Lulu speaks a word. Memories of Maxie come back with a clarity that unsettles him, not because they are painful, but because they are filled with warmth he thought he had buried. Her smile, her defiance, her vulnerabilities, all return with such force that he can no longer pretend his heart has moved on. His time with Lulu soothed him, offering companionship in the void, but it never replaced the bond he had with Maxie. The realization hits him with the weight of truth he can no longer outrun. If Maxie returns to him, he cannot deny her. His love for her never died. It merely slept as deeply as she did. Lulu feels the distance forming in Nathan, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Each quiet moment between them becomes a reminder that she stepped into a space that was never hers to keep. She tried to convince herself that circumstances do not diminish real affection, that Nathan chose her because he wanted her, not because he was lost. But Maxie's awakening shatters that illusion. Lulu must confront the painful reality that she is not the woman Nathan loves most, and perhaps never was. The ache of being replaced again wraps around her like a cruel familiarity, forcing her to question why she allowed herself to believe in something so uncertain. While Nathan and Lulu struggle with the emotional consequences of Maxie's return, Spinelli begins navigating his own quiet turmoil. He has always stood at the edge of Maxie's world, tethered by love, by shared history, and by an unspoken hope that someday their paths might align again. Maxie's coma forced him to accept a life where she belonged to someone else, but the possibility of her waking reignites feelings he never fully let go of. Spinelli does not wish to disrupt Maxie's life or cause her pain, yet he cannot ignore the flicker of possibility that her awakening might reshape more than just her own destiny. He senses that the emotional ground beneath all of them is shifting, and he must decide whether to step forward or remain in the shadows where he has quietly stayed for far too long. Maxie, though unconscious, becomes the center of everything unraveling around her. Her presence alone, fragile yet powerful, forces truths to surface and expose the instability of relationships built in her absence. Nathan feels compelled to return to the emotional path he abandoned when grief overwhelmed him. Lulu finds herself at a crossroads between love and self-preservation, knowing that holding on may only deepen the wound. Spinelli stands poised between hope and hesitation, uncertain whether Maxie's return will reopen old doors or close them forever. As the days move closer to the moment Maxie opens her eyes, the tension among the three grows heavier, like a storm waiting for release. Nathan must confront the emotional loyalty he owes to Maxie. Lulu must decide whether to fight for something she knows is slipping away or let it go before it destroys her. Spinelli must determine if he will allow himself to hope again, even at the risk of heartbreak. And when Maxie finally awakens, everything that has been quietly shifting will erupt into reality. Her return will not simply be a medical miracle, but a turning point that exposes hidden truths, forces long-avoided choices, and reshapes every relationship touched by her absence. Port Charles is about to witness a new emotional battle, one where no heart will emerge unchanged. Willow's descent into desperation unfolds with a chilling clarity as she begins to employ methods she once would have condemned. The fear of losing her place in her children's lives tightens around her like a vice, pushing her into a mindset where morality becomes negotiable and loyalty becomes fragile. She convinces herself that every extreme action is justified if it brings her one step closer to regaining control, and that conviction begins to twist her judgment in dangerous ways. The first sign of this darker shift emerges when Willow uses the custody agreement as a weapon. threatening to block Scout from seeing Danny and even preparing to accuse Danny of violating the restraining order. It is a tactic meant to intimidate, to corner, to force compliance through fear, and she delivers it with the cold precision of someone who has stopped caring about collateral damage. Willow knows the power these threats hold. Scout's bond with Danny is fragile enough as it is, and exploiting that weakness gives her leverage over Alexis. She approaches the situation with a hardened resolve, confronting Alexis not as a former ally but as an obstacle standing between her and the children she believes she is owed. The softness that once defined Willow's interactions disappears, replaced by a steely determination that borders on ruthless. Alexis, caught between legal responsibility and emotional loyalty, becomes Willow's first target in a calculated campaign designed to intimidate her into silence. Willow's tone, her posture, and the icy certainty in her eyes all signal a woman who has already crossed a boundary she cannot step back from. But Alexis is only the first. Willow's next confrontation, inevitable and volatile, comes with Michael. Their bond, once grounded in trust and shared grief, fractures under the weight of Willow's obsession. She no longer sees Michael as a partner or an anchor. She sees him as a gatekeeper, someone who has the power to deny her access to Wiley and Amelia. That realization ignites something fierce and irrational inside her. She begins to treat Michael not as the father of her children, but as a rival in a twisted emotional battle. Her words grow sharper, her demands more unreasonable, and her patience vanishes entirely as she lashes out at him for any attempt to slow her down or challenge her motives. Willow's entire mindset shifts toward a singular goal. Taking back everything she feels has been stripped from her. What Willow wants now is not just visitation, she wants full guardianship. The idea takes root in her mind, growing more consuming by the day, until it becomes the driving force behind every scheme she crafts. She frames it as justice, as a return to what is rightfully hers. But beneath the surface lies something more chaotic and unstable. It becomes clear that Willow is no longer fighting just for her children. She is fighting to reclaim a sense of identity she feels slipping through her fingers. Losing Wiley and Amelia has left an emotional void, and instead of healing, Willow tries to fill it through control, manipulation, and strategic cruelty. Her once gentle nature begins to warp into something unrecognizable, fueled by fear and an increasingly distorted understanding of motherhood. This new adjustment in Willow's behavior does not go unnoticed. Friends sense the shift, family members feel the tension, and even those she once trusted begin to back away cautiously. The transformation happening within Willow is not temporary. It is unraveling her stability thread by thread. Her decisions grow recklessly bold, her threats more vicious, and her willingness to dismantle relationships in pursuit of her goals becomes alarming. She starts to justify actions that betray her deepest values, telling herself that the return of her children is worth any cost. But the deeper she sinks into this new identity, the harder it becomes to see the line between determination and dangerous obsession. Willow's custody battle is no longer just a legal fight. It becomes a psychological war she is waging against the world and against herself. The madness of her mission intensifies each day, turning her into someone capable of acts she once would have feared. Her pursuit of Wiley and Amelia becomes a fixation, a consuming fire that threatens to burn down every structure of trust she once relied on. And as Port Charles watches her unravel, one truth becomes increasingly undeniable. Willow is stepping into a new version of herself, one driven not by love, but by fear, desperation, and a terrifying willingness to destroy anything standing between her and the children she is slowly losing a grip on. Charlotte stands at a crossroads shaped by betrayal, loyalty, and the burning instinct to protect the one person she has always placed above herself, Valentine. The revelation of Nina's conversation with Brennan shatters whatever fragile trust still existed between them, leaving Charlotte suspended between fury and cold calculation. Nina was supposed to be an ally, someone who understood how delicate their world had become and how easily one wrong word could put Valentine at risk. Instead, she had chosen to align herself with someone Charlotte considered dangerous, a choice Charlotte interprets as the ultimate act of disloyalty. The betrayal echoes through her mind, settling into a hard, heavy determination that she can no longer afford to be the child everyone dismisses. She has to act. Charlotte weighs her options with the precision of someone far older than her years. One path calls for confrontation and explosive, undeniable reckoning that would force Nina to face the consequences of her actions. Charlotte can already feel the intensity of that moment, the adrenaline, the accusations, the raw truth spilling out in a collision neither of them can escape. But another part of her understands that confrontation may give Nina too much power. Nina has always excelled at turning emotions into weapons, using softness or guilt as she sees fit. Charlotte refuses to be manipulated again. She will not expose her vulnerabilities to the woman who has already betrayed her father. The alternative silence offers a different kind of strength. If Charlotte keeps her intentions hidden, she controls the battlefield. She can observe Nina's every move, uncover every secret connection, and strike at the exact moment Nina least expects it. Silence becomes strategy, distance becomes protection, and revenge becomes not just an emotional response, but a plan she nurtures with cold patience. This approach appeals to the part of Charlotte that inherited Valentin's tactical brilliance, the ability to see 10 steps ahead and use timing as a precision tool. She may be young, but she is not naive. She knows that the most effective retaliation is rarely lauded, is calculated, quiet, and devastating. Her loyalty to Valentin fuels every thought she has. Charlotte believes truly, fiercely, that Nina has compromised his safety and his dignity. The idea that anyone would jeopardize her father, especially someone who claimed to care, ignites a protective instinct so strong it borders on obsession. Charlotte begins to see herself not just as a daughter, but as a guardian of the Casadini legacy, responsible for defending Valentin against threats he may underestimate. Nina now becomes one of those threats. Charlotte convinces herself that if Valentin will not protect himself from Nina's betrayal, then she must do it for him. This need to reclaim power for Valentin marks a shift in Charlotte's identity. She stops behaving like someone waiting for adults to fix things. Instead, she steps into a more dangerous version of herself, one capable of manipulation, secrecy, and strategic ruthlessness. The new adjustment in her behavior becomes evident to anyone paying attention. Her movements are more deliberate, her words more guarded, her gaze sharper. She is transforming from a frightened girl into a calculating young woman, shaped by her family's history and the shadows she has been raised under. Charlotte begins to map out what an attack on Nina would look like. It may not be physical, but it will be disruptive, targeted, and impossible to ignore. She imagines undermining Nina's credibility, exposing her alliances, or orchestrating a situation that forces Nina into public humiliation. The goal is not simple revenge, it is the restoration of Valentin's honor, and the elimination of a traitor who has proven she cannot be trusted. Every plan Charlotte formulates carries the same message. Nina must learn that betrayal has consequences, and no one, not even family, gets away with harming a Casadini. As Charlotte's determination deepens, she stops questioning whether her actions are justified. In her mind, the path she is taking is the only logical response to what Nina has done. The innocence she once possessed gives way to the fierce protectiveness inherited from both her father and her Casadini bloodline. The moment Nina chose Brennan over loyalty, she set this transformation in motion. And now Charlotte stands ready to reshape the future in a way that ensures Valentin's protection and Nina's downfall. Whatever choice Charlotte ultimately makes, one truth becomes unmistakable. She is no longer the silent observer. She is stepping into power, into strategy, into vengeance. And Nina, whether she realizes it or not, is about to become the first casualty of Charlotte's awakening. Curtis turns to Alexis for assistance at a moment when uncertainty presses heavily on every corner of Port Charles. His request is not simply a legal matter, but a plea rooted in urgency. As he navigates a situation too volatile to handle alone, Alexis senses the weight behind his words, recognizing that whatever Curtis is facing is tied directly to the escalating unrest surrounding the investigation into Drew's shooting. The tension extends beyond the courtroom and bleeds into every personal relationship touched by the case, intertwining motives, suspicions, and the fragile stability that everyone is struggling to maintain. Meanwhile, Chase finds himself simmering with barely contained anger. His patience has already been worn thin by the unfolding chaos, and Michael's presence becomes the spark that ignites the explosion. Michael pushes the wrong button, perhaps unintentionally, perhaps by instinct, and Chase reacts with a fury that shakes the room. The two men stand on opposite sides of a growing divide, each carrying their own sense of righteousness, each refusing to back down. Chase sees Michael as evasive, reckless, and increasingly suspicious. Michael sees Chase as someone who is too quick to judge and too blind to understand the complexities of the situation. Their clash becomes not just a personal conflict, but a symbolic battle, representing the widening fractures across the community. At the same time, Jacinda finds a moment of solace in reconnecting with Christina. Their conversation provides a rare pocket of warmth amidst the chaos, but even here, the shadow of the investigation lingers. Jacinda tries to piece together her own feelings about the danger that seems to encircle Port Charles, while Christina offers the kind of empathy that only someone carrying her own burdens can provide. Yet beneath their friendly exchange lies the awareness that something darker is taking shape, something neither of them can ignore for long. The real storm, however, centers around Michael. The investigation into Drew's shooting has reached a critical turning point, and the evidence, loose, circumstantial, but impossible to dismiss, begins to point in a direction no one expected. Michael Corinthos, once seen as a stabilizing force, gradually becomes suspect number one. It is not a direct accusation at first. Rather, it emerges through whispers, tense glances, and quiet conversations exchanged behind closed doors. People begin revisiting Michael's actions, his whereabouts, his strained relationships, and the choices he has made under pressure. The possibility that Michael could be involved shifts the entire narrative into something far more explosive. Michael feels the pressure tightening around him like a noose. Every interaction becomes more charged, every gesture more heavily scrutinized. His frustration builds, feeding into the anger he directs at Chase and anyone else who treats him like a criminal. Without proof, Michael's emotional foundation begins to crack, revealing the fear, guilt, and internal conflict he has been trying to suppress. Whether he is innocent or guilty no longer seems to matter. Public perception is shifting, and once that shift begins, it becomes almost impossible to reverse. This new adjustment in the narrative sends shockwaves through every relationship Michael possesses. Willow's instability makes her question everything. Carly watches with growing alarm, sensing danger closing in. Sonny, caught between loyalty and logic, struggles to determine how deeply he should intervene. Michael feels increasingly cornered, convincing himself that no one truly understands the impossible situation he is trapped in. His temper flares, his decisions become impulsive, and the emotional strain begins to distort his judgment. As accusations swirl and alliances fracture, Port Charles finds itself on the edge of a deeper crisis. Curtis's request to Alexis, Chase's eruption of fury, Jacinda's quiet doubts, Christina's compassion, and Michael's intensifying paranoia all converge into a single narrative that threatens to unravel the lives of everyone involved. With Michael positioned as the prime suspect in Drew's shooting, the coming days promise not clarity, but chaos, an unfolding storm of suspicion, betrayal, and revelations that could change every relationship forever. And as the tension reaches its peak, one truth becomes increasingly undeniable. Michael Corinthos is no longer just navigating a personal struggle. He is standing at the center of a battle that could redefine the future of Port Charles. With every secret he holds capable of turning suspicion into catastrophe,